All right, get ready, folks, because today we are diving deep into the life and times
hmm
of Robert Louis Stevenson.
The man behind Treasure Island.
Oh, you know it.
And of course, the one and only Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A
Exactly.
chilling tale indeed.
Absolutely. We've got a lot to unpack here. We've got
Yeah.
some biographical info from the Academy of American Poets, his Wikipedia page.
Always a good place to start.
Always a good place to start. And even a couple of YouTube documentaries to round things out.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
So our mission, should we choose to accept it,
I think we should.
is to figure out what in the world inspired Stevenson to create such a dark masterpiece. How did that come about?
Well, it's fascinating because Stevenson's life was almost as adventurous as the stories he wrote.
Yeah.
And to really understand Jekyll and Hyde, I think we need to understand his journey
Okay.
from sickly child in Edinburgh to this globe-trotting writer.
I like it. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Edinburgh, 1850s. Just picture it. This stunning city, grand architecture everywhere you look. And of course, you can't forget that castle perched right on a volcanic rock.
Oh, yeah, imposing.
Imposing is a good word for it.
And kind of sets the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But there's this other side to Edinburgh, right?
absolutely. The elephant in the room, if you will, that strict Presbyterian society.
go on.
You've got this clash between, the outward beauty of the city and then this really rigid moral code that governed the people.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So enter young Robert Louis Stevenson, born in 1850,
Yeah.
right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
His family, they were lighthouse engineers.
Which is fascinating, right?
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's also maybe a lot of pressure.
I would imagine so. To follow in those footsteps, especially his father, Thomas Stevenson,
Right, yeah.
Prominent figure, even invented that revolving lighthouse light.
Dad, can I borrow the car? Yeah, just go design a lighthouse real quick. Oh, man. But seriously, this family background is important. You've got, on the one hand, the beauty and darkness of Edinburgh, and on the other hand, these massive family expectations.
These competing forces.
Competing forces, yeah. I like that. And then on top of all of that, Stevenson was a sickly kid.
He was, often confined to bed.
Yeah.
And I think that isolation really had a profound impact on his inner world. And that's where his nurse, Alison Cunningham, comes in.
Oh, good old Cummy, right?
Yes, Cummy.
I read that she was very religious and kind of filled his head with all these intense Bible stories.
She did.
Which is interesting because later on, he rejects Christianity.
He does. It wasn't all Bible stories, though, right?
Yeah.
Cummy also kind of introduced him to this darker side of Scottish folklore.
Oh, like what?
Tales of witches, ghosts,
Ooh, so good.
all that supernatural stuff.
Wow. Okay, so are we starting to see a pattern here, this duality that becomes so important in Jekyll and Hyde?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got the physical duality of Edinburgh, beautiful versus dark, and then you've got the expectations of his family, engineering versus art, and then even Cummy's influence, religion, and superstition all mixed together.
Right. It's like this constant push and pull.
Push and pull. I like that. And it's not just speculation. You can see this reflected in his early writing, like even in A Child's Garden of Verses, which he dedicated to Cummy later on in his life.
Mm.
A lot of people think those poems are directly inspired by his memories of those early years,
Yeah.
with that mix of light and shadow.
Yeah, it's all there.
Okay, so we've got the setting, the early influences,
Right.
but then comes the rebellion.
Oh, yeah.
He starts pushing back against those family expectations and embraces a more bohemian lifestyle.
Right. So what does that even look like in 19th century Edinburgh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, for one thing, he ditches those engineering studies that his father had really been pushing him towards.
Bold move.
Yeah, and decides to pursue writing instead.
Wow, so a big break from tradition.
Yeah, especially for someone from his background.
I can't imagine his dad was thrilled about that.
Probably not.
Who needs lighthouses when you can write poems about them, right, son? No, probably not.
Not quite the legacy he had in mind.
Right. But he wasn't just rebelling against his family, right? He also, openly rejected Christianity and embraced this very bohemian lifestyle. We're talking velveteen jackets, long hair, late nights in the shadier parts of Edinburgh.
Leave him on the edge.
He was, right. He was basically the 19th century version of the rebel without a cause.
Yeah, exactly.
But this rebellion is important because it shows us how Stevenson was already pushing boundaries, exploring the darker side of life, questioning all those norms.
Right. Testing the limits.
Testing the limits, yeah.
Yeah.
And that fascination with the duality of human nature, the
Yeah,
good
yeah.
and the bad, that's at the heart of Jekyll and Hyde, right?
Without a doubt. That's the core of it.
Okay, so Edinburgh sets the stage. The early influences, the rebellion, it's all coming together.
It is.
But then Fanny Osborne enters the picture,
Oh, yeah.
and she really throws a wrench in the works.
She does. Things get interesting here.
Things get interesting, right? This is where the adventure part of his life really kicks off.
Yeah, for sure.
So who is this Fanny Osborne?
She's an American woman, older than him, and get this, she's already married.
What?
But they fall deeply in love.
Oh, wow.
Talk about scandal in Victorian society.
This is huge, right?
huge.
Their affair and then eventual marriage must have caused quite a stir.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, can you imagine?
It really makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
Did this unconventional relationship influence the way he saw hidden desires, the constraints of society? I mean, it had to, right?
Right. It kind of forces him to confront those themes head on, both in his life and in his writing.
Absolutely.
This is a guy who was willing to break the rules, follow his heart, even if it meant going against everything society expected of him.
He was a true individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is when travel becomes a major theme in his life, right?
Yeah.
It starts partly for his health. He's always searching for a better climate for his lungs.
Right. Always trying to manage that.
But it's more than that.
It is.
He craves adventure, these new experiences, a break from all the expectations back home.
He wants to escape.
He wants to escape, yeah.
Yeah.
So he travels to France, California, the Swiss Alps,
Wow.
just soaking it all in.
Taking it all.
All these different cultures and landscapes.
He goes from this Edinburgh writer
Yeah.
to a citizen of the world.
A citizen of the world.
And you see that shift reflected in his work.
It's like he was constantly chasing something, always searching, always looking for a new perspective.
Always evolving.
So we've got Edinburgh, the rebellious youth, the whirlwind romance, the wanderlust.
It's all there.
It's like all these pieces of the puzzle are coming together to form the foundation of Jekyll and Hyde.
They are.
But how exactly did those experiences show up in his writing? How did he go from adventure stories like Treasure Island to the psychological depths of Jekyll and Hyde? What was that transition like?
That's a great question. And to answer it, we need to look at Victorian society as a whole.
Ooh, okay. Because there was something in the air back then, a certain unease that Stevenson was able to tap into brilliantly. And that's where the real story begins.
Okay, so Jekyll and Hyde, right. What was going on in the Victorian era that made this story resonate with people so strongly?
Well, it's funny because the Victorian era, on the surface, they're all about propriety and decorum.
Very buttoned up.
Yeah, exactly. But underneath all that, you have these anxieties bubbling away about morality, identity, the darker side of human nature.
Oh, okay. So they're very concerned with all these impulses.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you've got reason, science, progress, all that good stuff.
The Enlightenment.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, they're fascinated with the occult, spiritualism, things they can't explain.
Right, like maybe there are forces beyond our understanding.
Yeah.
And that tension, right? That's where Jekyll and Hyde comes in.
Okay, yeah.
Like Stevenson takes those unspoken fears and gives them a name, a face.
Makes them real.
Yeah, and monstrous even.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we think of the Victorians as so repressed, so focused on appearances.
Right.
But maybe that's what fueled his fascination with the darker side of things.
Oh, absolutely. Like a pressure cooker, right? Keep everything bottled up. Eventually something has to give.
And in Jekyll and Hyde, that something is pretty terrifying.
I say the least.
And think about it. Jekyll and Hyde is published in 1886.
Yep.
Right in the middle of all this social and cultural change.
Huge upheaval.
Yeah, you've got Darwin challenging traditional beliefs with evolution.
Right.
Jack the Ripper terrorizing London.
Adding to the anxiety, for sure.
And all these new ideas about psychology and the subconscious.
Yeah, that's a lot to process.
So into this atmosphere walks Jekyll and Hyde.
This story about a well-respected doctor.
A pillar of the community, right?
Exactly. Transforming into this monstrous criminal.
Wow. It's like he's taking all those fears about identity, morality, violence, and distilling them into this one powerful story.
It's potent stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just the story itself.
Right.
It's the way he tells it.
Oh, yeah.
That atmosphere, so creepy, unsettling.
Like you're walking those foggy London streets yourself.
Yeah.
You never know what's lurking around the corner.
And the characters, familiar, yet so disturbing.
Like they're hiding something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the transformation.
Chilling, right.
It's horrifying, but I can't look away.
It taps into that fear of losing control, becoming something monstrous.
It's a primal fear.
I think that's why we're still fascinated by Jekyll and Hyde today.
Yeah.
It's a story that transcends time.
Speaks to something universal, that duality in us all.
Exactly.
But do you think Stevenson was trying to make a social commentary with this story?
You know, it's hard to say for sure,
Yeah.
but you can't ignore those themes woven into the story.
What do you mean?
Well, Jekyll is a respected doctor, right?
Oh,
Makes his transformation even more shocking.
yeah, anyone could have a dark side.
Exactly. Even the most upstanding citizen.
And then there's London itself,
The setting, yes.
almost a character in its own right.
Absolutely. Sprawling, full of secrets.
The perfect place for a monster to emerge.
And don't forget, London was also transforming during this time.
Oh, right.
The old versus the new, clashing social classes, it mirrors that instability of the era.
So we've got Stevenson's personal experiences, the anxieties of the time, this incredibly vivid setting.
The perfect storm.
Yeah, all coming together to create this masterpiece of Gothic horror.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But Jekyll and Hyde was just one chapter in Stevenson's story.
Right.
What happens next?
Yeah.
Where does this restless soul take him after he unleashes this dark masterpiece on the world?
Well, he doesn't exactly settle down and relax.
Of course not.
No, he set sail for the South Pacific. A new chapter begins both in his life and his writing.
Wow, okay. And this is where things get really interesting in terms of his personal growth and how it's reflected in his later work, the South Pacific. What took him there?
Well, he's still battling those lung problems, always searching for a healthier climate.
Right.
But it feels different this time. Like he's looking for something more. A new way of life, maybe.
So he finds it in Samoa.
Yeah, he settles there in 1890 with his family.
Wow.
And get this, he embraces Samoan culture.
Really?
Oh yeah, he even takes on a native name, Tusitala,
What does that mean?
teller of tales.
That's pretty fitting.
Isn't it? It's remarkable, you know, this Scottish writer, famous for Gothic horror and adventure,
Yeah.
finds a new home, a new identity on this Pacific island.
And his writing changes too, right?
Absolutely. Less about swashbuckling pirates and more about the complexities of human nature, especially in these morally gray areas.
Do you have an example?
The Beach of Falesa,
Okay.
set in the South Seas, deals with colonialism, moral ambiguity, clashing cultures.
Interesting.
The heroes aren't perfect. The villains are complex.
Sounds like a departure from his earlier work.
It is. A new voice, a new perspective.
You know, it makes you wonder, did Samoa unlock something in him?
It's possible, this immersion in a completely different culture. Maybe it helped him confront those internal struggles he'd been carrying.
It's a pretty powerful transformation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
This is a guy who started out in the shadow of Edinburgh and his family's legacy.
Right.
He rebels, embraces adventure, finds love, and ends up halfway across the world.
Embracing a whole new way of life, a whole new way of telling stories.
It really shows you that life is a journey. And sometimes the most unexpected turns lead to the greatest discoveries.
It does.
Sadly, Stevenson's journey was cut short.
Way too soon.
He died in Samoa in 1894.
Only 44 years old.
Even in his unfinished work, you see this evolution, this deeper understanding of what it means to be human.
Always pushing himself, exploring new themes, new styles.
So after this deep dive into his life and work, what do you think makes Stevenson so relevant today?
His willingness to explore the shadows, to really confront the complexities of human nature.
Yeah.
He doesn't give us easy answers or tidy endings.
Instead, he leaves us with questions, with a sense of wonder and unease.
And a lasting appreciation for the power of stories.
Stories that illuminate the darkest corners of our souls.
Exactly. That's what makes him so fascinating. He reminds us that even in darkness, there's always light.
And the most compelling stories are often those that dare to explore the shadows within us all.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, folks, it looks like we've reached the end of our deep dive into the life and times of Robert Louis Stevenson.
A fascinating journey.
But the exploration doesn't have to end here.
That's right.
Pick up a copy of Jekyll and Hyde or any of his other works.
See what resonates with you.
Until next time, happy reading.